back to your resources, and we're going to talk about what you looked up and then go over the evaluation exercise, and then go into our week 3 questions, and then talk about laws that govern chaplaincy. Okay, so resource developments. There are different places that we can refer people to and take advantage of. There's adoption, foster parent services, alcohol and substance abuse places. I think we would prefer to recommend them to Christian places. They usually have the higher rate of success and not falling back into it. Children and youth services, clothing distribution, disability services, education and training, employment, family and marriage counseling, financial services, food and nutrition. People need help with that. Health and medical, I think today a lot of people particularly need that. You can go to hospitals and clinics like St. John's, housing and shelters. They're temporary places and longer term. Legal services, I believe, well, I was going to say Hope Center on Groesbeck has legal services, but I think it was, what I saw was they do tax returns.
Hope, they're closing, I looked it up. They're closing November 1st.
That particular one?
Yeah, I was really bummed when I found out. When I was looking for this stuff, it had it on their website.
Okay, so
I was just like, wow, they even paid me like utility bills and they did other stuff there.
But I think there's a different center. It's like a.
Is there a different, like another branch of it?
I think there is somewhere, maybe.
It says there's other ones that are, they just weren't getting enough funding.
And so you'd probably have to, we could probably look into it and find one that's farther away, a center that's associated with them. Mental health services, pregnancy, prenatal care, rehabilitation. That could be with drugs or also physical rehabilitation, special needs. There are a lot of programs for people with special needs, like workshops that they can go to. Senior citizens, a lot of the cities have special benefits for senior citizens in their city. Support groups, like if you have problems with alcohol or grief, support groups where you get together and help minister to one another. Veteran services, crisis interventions, substance abuse, social services. I've got some notes here. Local clubs and agencies, like the Lions Club. They work with people that, they help people that need glasses with eyes. Shriners work with children with handicaps. There's different benevolence organizations like the Rotary Club. There's churches, fundraising organizations. A lot of places raise money for special needs like cancer or treatment. Like I remember somebody calling that said that, you know, that some places help with treatment, some places help with research, and some places help with some just different things that they need for everyday life. Police and sheriff departments, fire, other chaplains, groups, and ministries. So those are just some ways that you can look into where we can find help for people that we work with. So, in your home,
transportation,
there is. And some of that is with when some people are on like social services, they can get appointments to go, if they have to go to doctor's appointments, can arrange transportation to certain, so within a certain, you know,
and then
distance.
seniors can even get rides to like the grocery store.
Yeah.
They're pretty expensive, like $1. Something really inexpensive. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah. And every city has its own little thing, as long as you go like in that city.
Right. For where they live. Some of them are better
like if you
than
live in
others.
St. Clair Shores, stay in St. Clair Shores.
Right. So what scenarios did you choose? Did you choose the case study, or did you choose, did everybody use the case study?
I used the case study.
Did you, for your resource development? Roxanne, use a case study?
You know what, we didn't read that.
Okay.
I did not do that, I did the other one, but I didn't do
Okay.
that.
The reason that's important is because this next week after lesson 4, you're gonna start calling some places to see. A couple years ago, the first class I did, there was a scenario about, someone chose something about needing shelter for the night. And so they called around some different places like the Salvation Army to find somebody to get some urgent shelter. So anyway, we'll just read the case study, and then you can pick what one you want, a situation you want. You can use this one, you could use the drug situation. Last spring, we had this example that I kept bringing forth, that about the pregnant teen. So some people did that last spring when we did the case study. You could do something about a job situation, like we talked about the young person, not necessarily a man, who kept losing his job, needed a job. Okay. So in this situation, the case study, a couple, 24 years old, who have been married for 5 years, come to you because they feel they are in dire financial need. The wife has not worked since her baby was born 6 months ago. She was a preschool teacher. They agreed before having the child that she would be a stay-at-home mom. They had banked what they thought was an ample savings to help cushion their income, but they have already depleted their account. The husband received a 1-month notice this week that he was going to be laid off indefinitely from his job at a small machine shop. They have enough money to cover this month's bills, but not enough to buy food, formula, and gas. And they are in a panic. Okay, so according to your needs assessment, what did you find was the primary need, and what did you find was a secondary need? The urgent need that they need to take care of right now.
Food. Food.
Okay. So where did you?
Not that I did that.
Right.
The, food, there's like the Hope Centers, but the New Life Assembly of God has a food pantry.
Yeah, that's what I got.
And then St. Margaret's Scotland Church in St. Clair Shores, and then St. Paul of Tarsus.
Where's St. Paul of Tarsus at?
Romeo Plank in Clinton Township.
I got the House. My diapers, wipes, towels, blankets, all that. And then, I said maybe they could apply for Medicaid or Medicare.
Right.
Trying to help with that.
Well, Medicare is for if you're 65, so they're,
Okay.
so that
I
won't
didn't
work.
know that.
Yeah, that won't work for them. But Medicaid, there's like, I guess what they had, aid to dependent children. I mean, right now they have, with an income, the people are kind of goofy about that, but it's going to disappear. But those are different avenues that they can.
And I found for emergency food, if they came to that, Macomb County Community Service Agency. And there's a phone number. SDHS, Food Assistance Program.
That's the first place you said, if they're having DHS, that would help out. And for diapers, if they have a 6-month-old, that would help out with expenses, but there's a few places, the Samaritan House in Washington Township. And then, like Birthright, and I think Abigail used to help out with diapers, but I think now they're only doing just the
Housing for
What
the
kind of
housing.
diapers? I wonder what kind of diapers?
for the babies, like,
I mean, will they give them disposable diapers? or
no,
cloth
they
diapers,
would
or-
just give them disposable diapers. I think it's just to help out.
Disposable diapers are expensive.
They are.
So it's just good.
You could have a whole garage full of diapers and
And then
You
there's
can
the
use
National Hunger. It's just for food pantries, government programs.
I know there used to be a thing called WIC, I don't know if they call it WIC anymore, or if they call it.
Right.
Or they get like peanut butter and cheese or something like that.
That's good, because it's protein kind of stuff, so. Okay, and what, so that's their urgent need, but what could you help them do for a little bit longer?
Well, he needs a job.
Right.
So, like, Michigan Works, I got those numbers.
Yeah, I got that too.
So, yeah, I would have them, I mean, they help out with all sorts of, like, training, and they even, I think when I went in there for, I'm not sure exactly,
Referrals.
they'll help you build your resume and then put it on Monster, and then they did like a job placement, which I thought was cool. You had to go through this like little class, and they would actually pay the employer reimbursement for half the wages for training.
Is this a government?
This was Works, Michigan Works.
Okay.
But when I was going in there, I mean, you had to like go through the class.
Right, to be
And
able to be
to be able,
placed.
and then they give you a certificate, and then you go to the job and say, they're gonna pay you half of what my wages are for like 90 days, so you can get on the job training.
Okay, so,
So that's what I was kind of cool. I don't know if they do that anymore, but that's what I mean.
okay, so the training is like during the day, or,
Well, you're out of work. I mean, a lot of times people are out of work, so yeah, it was during the day you had to take, like, it's a test to see where you're at, I think. It was like a placement.
An assessment.
Assessment test. And then, I don't remember. And then, I don't know if you would meet with them a few weeks or something like that, but then you get certificates that when you go to interviews, you can say, here, this is my certificate.
right, so do you pick the job, or do they recommend?
No, you go and interview at the job, and then you tell the job that they would get reimbursed if they hired you.
Oh, okay.
And you give them the certificate, and then they call in the certificate and say, we want to hire them, and then they would set it up where they get paid half.
Where the state would pay them half of.
My wage. So like, say that they pay me like $12 an hour, they get reimbursed $6.
So they can train you.
So they get paid, yeah. So it's like, so they can actually,
They can train you, and they're not paying you as much as they
Well, yeah, so
would
they're, like,
if you were
saving.
fully.
Right.
And is this from like 9 to 5 every day for the training?
Yeah, it's kind of like you would get the job, like you would go and
No, but
interview.
the training that you do first.
I think it was only a few hours. I think
Like
you did the test, and then they
Just
they
one
did some
assessment
class.
test.
Yeah, and then I can look into that more, because I was like, oh, that's not too bad, but I ended up getting a job right away. But it didn't work unless I went through the thing. So.
Sometimes you have to do that, Michigan Works, to even be able to collect unemployment, I think.
Yeah,
Or something
you
like
have to
that.
go through Michigan Works, and then they set up. That's
Yeah.
what kind of started the unemployment for like a week.
And then I figured, down the road, if he doesn't find that job right away, he's gonna be, might have the possibility of losing his home. Because, you're not making your mortgage payments, so I found a jobless homeowner who needs help in making mortgage payments. That, and then, the last resort for financial assistance. And that was from the Salvation Army. And then they might even need money management skills. I mean,
Right.
who knows what they did with the money that they potentially had saved up, that they saved up, now it's
Right,
gone.
it could be that, you don't adjust your budget when you don't have money anymore, and you buy the steak instead of the,
Hot dog.
yeah. Well, you know what?
Beans and rice and
Yeah.
When Carl was looking at actually, he just brought this up last week or so, he had gotten these hot dogs on sale or whatever, and he was saying like, hot dogs are like $4 and $5 a pound. Well, you can buy real meat for that.
I
Some
don't
of
even
them.
buy hot dogs, so I don't know.
The hot dogs I like are like $5.
Yeah.
You can buy never. Well, I mean, that's probably like real. That's not really considered a
Vienna.
hot dog.
The Vienna.
Yeah. Right, but I mean, it's like, I'd rather get a steak for that. But sometimes hot dogs are really cool. But,
I'll
and-
decide on the 12 once in a while.
Any other comments about the case study? Did you think it was helpful to try to think about and actually look at the source for trying to find the needs to refer to?
Yeah, I just I wanted to dig deeper into it and call places and just be like, more calling them and seeing what they.
Well, at the end of lesson 4, that's part of your assignment is to call places.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be interesting just to see.
First step is to help get the resources, and then after that, an exercise in
So
calling
that would be
places.
our upcoming homework.
It's part of that.
And just like it said, he might need money for gas. Well, that's when carpooling comes in, take the bus if you live close, ride a bike, or walk. Or they also have
Uber
things for transportation and utility assistance if it comes down to it, and that.
Okay, so let's go over your questions for last week. 3, the golden rule begins with you. How many guys get your questions?
Oh, I did.
You did them?
Where is it?
All right.
There it is.
Yeah. Melissa,
Oh.
and you did yours too. And Elise, hopefully gets hers done before she gets back, or yes, okay. Does any one of these particular questions particularly touch you, or, because we're not going to discuss all of them, but one that particularly means something to you or struck a chord with you?
I like the first one.
Okay, you want to start off with that then?
Well, because they're asking what type of education or training in morals or ethics did you receive while you were growing up? So when I was a child growing up, I was raised partly by my grandparents and then partly by my mother, but she was divorced and was a single mom at that time. So while my grandparents were Christians and lived their life a certain way, and they had a mutual respect for each other, and to me, I just thought that that was normal. I didn't know any other way. So I went to go live with my mother, and then there were things that I didn't know about my mom until I actually lived with her. I don't want to talk bad about my mom, but things were just really different, and I seen life in a really different perspective. And now that I'm older, I can compare the two, and I can see how having 2 different types of foundations and the results of those foundations, whether you know it or not, there are results of the way that we choose to live. Definitely. 2 different lifestyles. So seeing 2 different lifestyles in one lifetime. Pretty interesting.
Do you think that changed, did you reflect on that, when as you grew up? Just wondering what the difference between your grandparents, did you correlate,
I didn't really, when you're young, you don't always,
It's not conscious.
you're not conscious of that type of situation, I think, until after you're an adult and you can look back on it and reflect. I can remember so many things different about the way that I grew up when I lived with my grandparents than when I lived with my mom while she was divorced, or even when she got remarried. 2 totally different lifestyles, 2 different just ways of life, and totally different results from both lifestyles, being one person. So if you never lived on, another side, how would you ever really know for sure what it's like? Because the way that you're living just seems normal, and even when you change to another way, it's still normal while you're there.
but to see normal. 2 of them at the same time.
But then I think when you're older and you can reflect on those, then you can see that there was a difference. But you just think it's normal when you're a kid. I don't know how to explain.
No, I know. It's just like the way I grew up. I just thought it was normal until I left home, and I was like,
right. So you can see things differently.
Yeah, you just don't. You don't know any different, so you're just thinking well, this is just the way it is. Until you step back and you're like,
No, that's not the way it is, but
I know that
you don't get it when you're a kid.
my mom, early on, was a single mom. And I remember, you know, you'd come home from school and I could do whatever I want and go wherever I wanted, but my friend had to call her mom to see if she could do different stuff. And I didn't understand that until I became, like Roxanne said, older, that, you know, I would call my mom from home about the day, just say that I was home or whatever, but I didn't have to ask her if I was gonna go to the shopping center or go ride my bike or stop off at my friend's house, whereas my friend, her mom was a stay-at-home mom, and now that I look back, she had some very good moral upbringing, better than me, you know, but
She just wanted to know where she was, you know.
right, she had to consult her mom, she couldn't just do whatever she wanted, and I think that was good for her. It provides that safety boundaries that we talk about, so you know, like you said, you didn't, so that kind of left me to do what I wanted, and, you know, there's a lot of things that parents don't know when they're not right there when you get home.
Two totally different scenarios of someone that knows about your homework and someone that never knows about your homework. Or when you're in, like with my mom, I was responsible for everybody else getting their homework done. That was I was the oldest one, so when I lived with my grandparents, I didn't have those responsibilities. I could be a kid, but when I lived with my mom, I really couldn't be a kid. I had to take over the responsibility of all the other ones.
How many other ones?
3 other ones. So, just totally different. I remember one time being so hungry. I looked in the cupboard and I found a can of spinach. Canned spinach. I was so hungry, I ate that. When I lived with my grandparents, I never even thought about being hungry. We had more food than, right, and plus we grew a garden in the backyard. We had food all year round, canned, we had, you know, and I knew how to grow a garden when I was a kid. That was just something that we did every year, you know? Just certain things that you grew up with that you don't realize. You know, but you can really benefit from both depending on how your skew on it.
The information and, yeah.
Right, you know, you can benefit from both and appreciate different
I think just like,
situations
I
in
think
life.
like with kids, like stability and consistency and all that stuff is huge, like, you know,
You gonna say that, Miss Melissa?
Oh, I was just gonna read what I wrote for number 1.
Okay.
I said I can't remember far back really. However, I do remember my mom saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. I don't even know if I followed this at all. I knew right from wrong. I didn't choose right sometimes. I picked on a girl every day for a while at times. At recess, I beat up my cousin's male friends when we were outside. Nothing really came of my actions except I'd hear that it's my tomboy, no one messes with her. They probably deserved it. So, well, I didn't think it was a strength because I figured I didn't have to be punished for my actions. I never really got in trouble when my parents knew about what I did. As a result, I said mean things to my mom in my teen years and even used foul language. Even as an unmarried adult, I didn't treat my mom with respect. I was a brat.
I hope that God changed you in that.
Yeah.
And so for some people, our experiences can be a strength, but more often I think today with today's society, unless you grow up in a strong Christian family, two-parent family is important. You know?
I did have a dad, but he wasn't very, he worked a lot.
That are active, parents or grandparents that are active in your life, that makes a difference. And I remember, I better not say that, so it's not on.
Oh, are we, so we're releasing too much information about ourselves?
Well, it wasn't me, I was gonna say something about a different situation that my mom dealt with, but it's not good maybe to be on video, if somebody's looking at it. So any other question that was, I think some of what we talked about goes along with some of these other things. Any other question that was particularly striking to you from the homework?
I think it described a situation when the pastor's a person in authority express value, appreciation, and respect for you. Mine was like kind of like both of those.
2 and 3. It's like, I remember just putting up a wall with people and like, you know, testing them to see if they even cared. And most of the time, like, people would do exactly what I thought and kind of push me away or be like not very nice. So I would automatically assume they didn't care, so I would just be rebellious and back toward them, or I roll my eyes, or I just wouldn't give them respect. Until like there was a teacher that I would, you know, of course I always thought I'd get in trouble with talk or whatever. And she noticed me, and the thing was is that I thought I was gonna get, she's like, I need to see you after class. And I remember like thinking, oh, if I'm in trouble again, like for whatever reason. And she's just like, you know, your grades aren't doing very good. And I already was like, did really horrible in school, and I just figured that I'm just not gonna do very good. But she like sat down with me and she's like, you know what, we're gonna get your grades up. And I'm like, didn't even think that was a possibility. And then she worked with me like every day after school in science. And she just like, I mean, I was like, wow, she cares. She was just a really nice lady, and it made a huge difference as a kid. And I think I was in 9th grade or something at the time. And then I had the same experience in the negative when I was in like 7th grade. I had a music teacher and I was playing the flute. And I was just trying to do it, and I sounded horrible, and he was in front of everybody, banging on the piano, telling me how a horrible player I was. And I was just mortified in front of everybody, and I quit. And I've never did any type of musical instrument since then. And it's just like, we have such influence on young kids that I'm like, what was that teacher's problem? You know, I mean, like, what was going through his life at the time, but I'm just saying, like, that whole thing, you know, killed my love for music. I mean, there was, like, you know, so you have one teacher speaking life into somebody, and then you have another teacher just taking it out. So, and it's just a kid, being a kid. But.
Yeah, so, I mean, our input in people's life, even though they're adults, can be very, very important.
Yeah, so it's like any type of, that's why I'm like, doesn't matter how bad you feel that day, I think your response to people should be uplifting and positive. I mean, even if you're like, you know, but I'm just saying like.
Well, especially like if someone's coming from counseling, they're probably at a vulnerable time in their life where words can have a bigger impact.
Any other comments about the homework? I just think it's very.
I didn't like the last question.
You know, like,
I couldn't do
it was just too hypothetical.
Are you willing to try things another point of view? And I'm like,
Well, what depends on what it is.
I know, that's what
I mean, I just put like way too hypothetical. I can't even elaborate.
I couldn't.
Yeah, we're not willing to try alternative lifestyles, but.
I was just like, yeah, I was like, well, what does that mean? I go, of course I'm willing to, but I'm like, what do you mean by?
Well, you want to see their point of view, but.
Well, I think what the reason they put this, well, I mean, this is.
I'm sure there's a reason, but.
What are you?
But when you're dealing with somebody, like, being able to, at least, even if you don't agree with why they're doing what they're doing, understanding understanding why they're doing that, they feel that way. You know, it doesn't help me now, but when, before we went to Guatemala, we lived in an apartment in Madison Heights. We moved out there when Amy was like 3. He worked at a shop, you know, over by Oakland Mall. And I was horrified to move in to find the cabinets were constantly being invaded with cockroaches. I since have dealt with them at bigger levels.
Oh man!
Yeah, in Texas, they're you know,
but they kind of, like in Philadelphia, they kind of stay in the radiators and the pipes, and they don't come out. But these were coming in my cupboards, and they were little all the time. So every month, I would call the maintenance department and have them come and spray, you know. But there was an Indian family that lived below me.
Oh, that's where you're coming from.
Well,
Maybe.
I mean,
They had
maybe,
a
but the
source.
fact, but the thing about that is that they, because of their beliefs, And, you know, I didn't think about it at the time. I mean, I understood that there was something about their culture that they didn't do it. But, you know, now understanding that the idea of reincarnation and
You were just killing the relatives. I'm kidding.
something like that, yeah. Yeah, you know, because they
don't.
their general, you know, Hindu belief is the reincarnation, that you come back as whatever. I mean, and they don't kill cows and just different things. Understanding a little bit about I understood, I mean, kind of did then, but understanding a little bit more later on, but it still didn't make me want to stay there. I said, Carl, we have to move, Carl, we have to move, man. We wouldn't move. But, you know.
He would move. I would, oh yeah, I'm not a bug person. Not in my house.
You know.
Be outside.
But, so, I mean, I understand why they didn't, but it didn't make me sympathetic at all, and it didn't help me because I was horrified.
Well, you had to
How
live there.
long have you lived there?
I don't remember, maybe a year.
And then you moved to Belgium.
No, we moved to Guatemala.
Oh, you knew. Was there cockroaches in Belgium?
Different kinds of bugs and things.
Yeah, they have all sorts of neat stuff in different countries that you don't know about.
Yeah. But, you know.
Neat stuff, dude. Like, what?
Okay, now I just want to briefly go over this evaluation of interview exercise because, briefly, we're just gonna, one who wants to read it out loud, or I can
Page
read it
7.
out loud.
Oh, we have page number? 5 page number, fine.
It's the second to the last one, probably,
The evaluation.
In
area.
chapter 3 or chapter 4?
in chapter 3. Because you didn't have the benefit of going through the whole lesson before you did we didn't have time, because I forgot why someone was leaving or whatever, they wanted to do it before.
Oh, at least. She
No.
wasn't gonna be here.
Right, for this time to do it. So, introduction, like we mentioned, chapter introduces you themselves. They might not know you. Okay, if you're going into a hospital or a prison, hi, I'm chaplain so-and-so, or I'm Lynette from the chaplaincy, and da-da-da-da. Did the chaplain give the client opportunity to introduce him or herself? When you introduce yourself, they're probably going to. Was an effort made to make the person comfortable? How? Well, you gave him a joint, you know.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Beer.
We're talking, because
Yeah,
our
sure.
interview was dealing with the kid that was having problems with drug or alcohol, right? Okay, so that's not really making them real comfortable, but when you're being accepting, you know,
Just don't be too accepting.
yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're too straight-laced looking, some people are not gonna like it. So did the chaplain make the person comfortable? How did they do it? So this is things to help provoke you. Was there a climate set? Describe it. So, well, we're not describing it, but to set an atmosphere, you set the rules, kind of were open-ended questions asked? Was the problem identified? I mean, did you identify the problem? Does the person become aware of it? Did the chaplain identify impending changes or opportunities? Were strengths and weaknesses identified and addressed? If somebody is undisciplined, like we talked about the guy that couldn't keep the job, or, you know, not a whole lot of self-control as far as, you know, staying up too late or doing drugs, were those issued directly or indirectly? Sometimes we have to be very indirect, and sometimes we're too subtle that people don't pick it up. Were solutions discussed? Was the chaplain ministering using the motto we learned from Jesus? Identify what you saw: compassion, acceptance, you challenged people, and he also encouraged too. What listening skills can you identify? Sometimes I think we want to talk too fast. And we need to learn to encourage people to explain themselves, and sometimes their motives. Sometimes they, you know, don't think people understand. So, I mean, the motive makes a big difference. I killed somebody because they were coming after me with a butcher knife. I killed somebody because he looked cross-eyed at me.
And then you'd be like,
I'm done here.
I didn't realize they really had a glass eye, so now I feel bad. Just kidding. The person that looked cross-eyed at him.
Yeah, thank you for explaining those. where were they lacking? Where am I lacking when I talk to people? You know, sometimes I think maybe my facial expressions are partly the worst thing. Was encouragement given and hope inspired? If they was proper confrontation used empathetically? Was trust established? Did the chaplain dominate? Give inappropriate self-disclosure? Interrogate? Give inappropriate patterns of response? Yeah, right. False assurance, judgment, pressure tactics. Conclusion, was impending change or opportunities evaluated after if they were identified? Was the client challenged to count the cost, benefit of change? Were proper resources referred to? Sometimes, yeah, you just kind of say, you go do this, but they don't know what's going to happen to them, what could happen to them. You know, I mean, like if you go into withdrawal, that's not very fun. I mean, I've heard, I understand.
It looks like it really sucks.
It really sucks is not an appropriate response.
Yeah, it really
It does, it looks like it really, really stinks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying that, look,
From a withdrawal thing, that would be rough.
yeah, so when you're talking to somebody else, I mean, you know, when you're talking with your buddies, that's one thing. We're not talking with our buddy. That's what, you know, so you need to maintain a decorum, yeah, you know, not professional in the attitude of tie, but, you know, you are representing God, so, yeah. There's a plan clearly set out, identifying mutual expectations. Oh, I never noticed identify is spelled. Correct that too. Was ongoing support discussed? This sounds like a whole lot for a short interview, especially the 15 minutes, 10 minutes we have, but even if you have 45 minutes, you might not cover all that. And so I would recommend, you know, I think if you're too long, you know, unless you're doing like a mentoring Bible study kind of thing, somebody, you don't want to be too long because it's just not going to impact, you're not going to do anything more than tire both of you out. Okay? All right, so that concludes week 3, I think, unless there's any comments or questions about that you can think of now.
I mean, so we're gonna be doing homework based on this too, as a practice.
Well, that was supposed to be.
This is what I was supposed to do.
The evaluation is what if we did an interview in front of somebody else. Like if we did a role play and you'd be saying, did they do this and that? We
Kind of
might,
like what we did, but only, we just kind of jumped into it
without going over anything and not being able to see what other people did wrong. So we might be able to set this aside and do some kind of an interview within the next other, 8 weeks. Laws that govern chaplaincy. Do I look more intelligent?
Oh, yes. Yes. School teacher look.
All right. Just like the ACLU and all these other people, atheist and Madam Mary O'Hara's groups and stuff, has challenged stuff. The world didn't like certain things about religious workers in secular sections. So there were a few laws in the appeal and Supreme Court that went favorably that give us the permission and the authority to act in some secular situations, okay? And we're going to read a couple of these statutes, which, in legal things first. The First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States provides the following protection. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. One court summarized the protection of the First Amendment. The amendment protects freedom of religion, speech, and expression of view. It protects the free exercise of religion, and it ensures freedom of religious worship by prohibiting the government from any establishment of religion. When I talked a little bit about, initially about Thomas Jefferson and the separation of church and state, the federal government had, at the time, if you remember, that other governments in other nations, whatever religion, and they were all some religion, the monarch was, everybody else had to come in line with that, and other people were persecuted, and that's why the Puritans came over from actually from Holland, but they were first from England, because they were not in the favorable religious group at the time. So when the founders formed our government, they didn't want the government to say, you have to be Baptist, or I'm the leader and so you have to be Methodist, which I don't know if those were existing at the time, but I'm just using those as examples. So that was the thing about the government, that the government wasn't going to say you have to be this. Our Constitution says I have the freedom to practice, and I understand, like, with the Soviet Union, now I don't know if it's still the same way now that it's just Russia, had the freedom not to practice. And you look in Europe, the free thinkers in around 1850, they all did their best to eliminate and throw off the shackles of religion, because religious rules inhibit man's exercise of free will. But we have the freedom to practice our religion the way we see fit, as long as it is not, giving Kool-Aid to members. You know about Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid?
Mm-hmm. What about Kool-Aid?
Well, there was a cult, and the leader's name was Jim Jones, and the government went in, they had kind of had a thing, and they killed everybody off, suicide, but mass suicide, killing off by drinking Kool-Aid.
That's where, you know
What? I wanna read
Go
that.
in, drink the Kool-Aid. It's a thing for sales. Drink the Kool-Aid, blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking, I've never had.
But did they know?
Because
Did they
now
know
Kool-Aid,
that they were
that's
doing that, or was it just?
I would have to look into it. I think the adults did, the children did not.
Someone knew, but.
What is it called?
Who
Jim
knew and who
Jones?
didn't?
Jim Jones.
Jones and Kool-Aid.
Somewhere down.
Huh. I will let them.
So the government can't say that I can't practice. They can't say that we can't meet in a house to pray and read the Bible. In other countries, they didn't have that at that time. So there's a distortion, just like the meaning of the Constitution, the intention, actually the black and whiteness now of the written words. Now they're interpreting it and they're modifying it and they're going the spirit of the thing. But we are able to meet peacefully, to assemble. We can sit in this building and not get arrested. It's part of the First Amendment. I'm not going to go any further because I can tell them. So there was a 3-prong test. Okay, to determine whether a statute will offend the establishment of religion clause. Okay, so the government, it couldn't establish religion, so I'm going to have to read this, take this off, and I'm going to write it up there. So there was 3 tests, okay, that were, and I'm writing it on the board because it makes it a little bit clearer than seeing it. And there's different judgments that go along with these 3 tests. So for a chaplain to be permitted to work somewhere, there has to be a secular purpose in the agency. Okay.
Can you define that a little bit?
Okay, like the company, the agency realizes that there is a lot of depression, and they recognize that having a counselor there to talk to is a benefit. So it's not a religious purpose, it's a secular purpose, it's a practical thing, okay? All right. And its principal or primary effect must be one that neither advances nor inhibits the religion, okay? So, make this lighter. So it means that I'm not trying to tell you that it's not evangelistic, like it does not advance or, that's an R, prohibit religion. So it's not.
It does not?
It does not, right, sorry.
So that neither.
Okay, so it's not telling them that, it's not making it like promoting being part of a particular church or religion or philosophy, because a lot of these atheistic organizations are actually religion, but it doesn't prohibit it either, okay?
Kind of neutral.
Yeah, it's got to be neutral. It's not to try to propagate, okay, and we're going to see the couple different tests that it was in. And the third thing is that it does not foster excessive government entanglement or involvement, that the government is not monitoring or supervising the exercise of this activity, okay? And this was in Lemon versus Kurtzman, okay, which we are going to talk about it in a little bit. If I go back here, am I still in the camera? Okay. All right, the secular purpose. I'm going to read this here. The government act in question must not have a religious purpose. The Supreme Court has explained that there can be, it's called an animus, or encourage religion in the design or goal of the program. Okay, so it's not like to be a catechism class. Religious tests for public employment are unconstitutional per se, which they did have before the country became a country, a religious test that if you were going to be in the government, you had to do an exam, you had to be part of a certain religion, or say, you know, I believe these things in order to hold office. Okay, so there's no, that was a couple hundred years ago. So that means, you know, I mean, there were infidels then, the people didn't believe in any gods then, so, you know, less than now. But the court has also made it clear that the presence of religious purposes would not doom a law or practice as long as there was a secular purpose. So in your ministering, because you are ministering, but they would call it, you know, encouraging, counseling, supporting, okay? You can, because you're talking about the Bible, we're talking about God as a means of guiding somebody, does not prohibit. It's not prohibited. It says that you're not denied the ability. You have the right. You are able to do it because of Lemon versus Kurtzman, because it shows that you have a secular purpose, and just because you use a religious means, a vehicle like a service, a prayer, Bible scriptures, you're not prohibited from doing that, because there is the secular purpose of encouraging, counseling. If there's people that are extremely depressed or having family problems, and having somebody to help them makes them better employees. Okay? Okay, the primary effect test. The second prong of the Lemon Test states that the principal or primary effect of a law or program must be one that neither advances nor inhibits the practice of religion. Okay, well, just because a program has a primary effect to provoke some secular end, nevertheless, the program may be further explained to ascertain whether it has the direct and immediate effect of advancing religion. So, in one of these court cases that we're talking about, the city, I believe it was Charlotte, I have to look, employed a Baptist minister as the city chaplain, and it was challenged by somebody in the area because they felt that it was promoting his church. Okay, but it was overturned. So if you are trying to, use
A government position to benefit your church, then that wouldn't be, that
Right.
wouldn't be right.
right. Okay. Okay, an excessive entanglement. The final question under the Lemon Test is whether the challenge practice gives rise to an excessive government entanglement with religion. Government oversight determining what material is religious and what is not. Inquiries into religious doctrine, detailed monitoring or close administrative contact is likely to violate the undue entanglement prong of the test. Oversight by the chaplains themselves also risks undue entanglement. So I think that's pretty clear. That the government agency or supervisor isn't supposed to be, it doesn't need to, and is actually prohibited from checking out too much the actual walking out of the administration of your ministry, okay? Because the government cannot be involved in promoting religion. And if they're overseeing it too much, then they are messing also with our freedom of expression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if somebody doesn't want a Christian chaplain, they can get a Jewish chaplain. Or they can get, a Buddhist chaplain. There's, like as we mentioned the first week, that originally chaplain was Christian, but then it has been broadened to include other religions, and even, as we were marveling, atheist chaplains. So,
And what about, would that reflect at all on the excessive entanglement? Like, for example, when the IRS was they were auditing
a ministry?
What's that?
A ministry?
Ministries like non-taxable ministries, or like the 501c3, or people that supported certain Christian advancements or whatever. I remember the IRS was auditing people that were Christians, and they didn't pay taxes because they were exempt from paying taxes because the money was made by donations, etc.
Well, if you look, I know they did check into Ben Carson, for example, and nonprofit religious organizations outside of churches do have to report. But if you're operating through a church, for some reason, we have this privilege of the nonprofit status, and they won't, at present, investigate a church activity. If I had an evangelistic association or a separate ministerial association, they can go in and check your books. It is a privilege to get a tax exemption for our donations, but it isn't, really, I think a lot of Christians would still give if they didn't get that. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of deductions to be able to take advantage of it, and not everybody does, so. So it doesn't mix with this particular thing because it's, I mean, we would consider it excessive government entanglement. But there is, I remember when we went to Guatemala, particularly that was back in '87, we had an orientation, they were talking about it, that a church or 501c3 is protected as opposed to other nonprofit from even religious associations. Okay, so there was three rulings. Carter versus Broadlands Medical Center, Boswinkle versus the City of Charlotte, and Lynch versus Conley, which we're going to talk about.
Is it Conley or Donnelly?
Oh, Donnelly, sorry. These next two sections, laws continued, after the three judgments, legal decisions, talk about the difference between, and it's kind of confusing. Each time that I've gone through this, it's been kind of confusion, okay? The first thing, Uniform Rules of Evidence defines what a cleric is. A chaplain is not a cleric. A cleric that is like a licensed minister, a rabbi, a priest. And there is a thing that, just like lawyers, of privilege, that if somebody comes to a priest, a licensed minister, as their confidant, you know, like if you're making confession, that those ministers are prohibited from revealing what was told to them. Okay. But as a chaplain, it's different. A chaplain, although it's a religious worker, is not considered a cleric. And so if somebody is talking to us with the idea that they confess that they murdered somebody and that we cannot tell, just like a journalist is not supposed to be forced to reveal their source, we are, as chaplains, are obligated to turn over that information. So it would be good for people to understand that. Because it might...
So if I killed somebody and I went to a priest and told them that I killed somebody, they can't say anything.
But if you went to Melissa and told Melissa you killed somebody and they asked her to testify, she would have to testify.
Huh. So what happens to the priest? What happens if the priest says something? Would he go to jail?
You know, I really don't know of a case. I'd have to look into that because I'm sure somebody of confidence.
Like,
I mean, he doesn't even have to say if he was told or not. How would they know? Because he doesn't have to.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Doesn't
like,
have to
she
give
was
that
just saying if
information.
she was testifying against me, so that the priest wouldn't be able to testify against
Right.
the person.
Right.
But he
But
could,
they
like-
might feel like because of their conscience, they might feel that they should go to the police or whatever. I would say they would have to, because they're by this religious privilege ruling, they could go to jail for that. So I would say they would have to do like an anonymous tip kind of a thing. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it because the person is supposed to be able to go to their lawyer as they're supposed to be able to go to their religious authority minister in confidence to be able to consult and confess to them and talk to them. So that's the reason I'm not reading this, because each time I've read it through, it is it's kind of confusing the way it's written. Because why would they give all this information about it and then to find out that we're not technically considered their spiritual advisor? Okay, so if the individual who was the cleric at the time of the communication is presumed to have authority to claim the privilege, but only on behalf of the communicant, the person who told them. Okay, so let's go next to the next page. Okay. Related Michigan laws about privileged communication. It describes that a minister that is considered a minister, a priest, or Christian Science practitioner. No minister of the gospel or priest of any denomination whatsoever or duly accredited Christian Science practitioner, which I guess is their designation, shall be allowed to disclose any confessions made to him in his professional character in the course of discipline enjoined by the rules or practices of such denomination. I don't know if their denomination would be the ones that would exercise some kind of correction or legally. Okay. However, the Child Protection Law, Act 238 of 1975, okay, it does say that, including clergy, if we become aware of child abuse or child neglect, we are obligated to report it.
Well, I mean, it is a control thing, but
Well,
we need, it's like we need to protect the ones that cannot protect themselves.
right. I mean, like if you know that somebody is doing drugs, you might not feel a moral conviction to report them, but if you know or suspect that someone is being abused or neglected, a child, then we need to report it because you can be prosecuted. However, there is a catch-22, like with some teachers or whatever that may suspect, and then they get in trouble because they did bring attention to some agency and it was found that maybe there was nothing. So it's kind of like they get kind of,
You almost have to be sure.
yeah, but if you think, then you gotta, you know, because, yeah, somehow it's kind of, it puts you at risk, but then we are, like you said, responsible as moral adults to protect the people that cannot protect themselves. A lot of, you know, children really don't have a lot of rights, if you really want to go about it. So, you know, they can't speak for themselves, or even if they do, then there can be a question. Okay, last paragraph on this page. Things to consider. Be sure to know exactly your state's law on privileged communication. Get a copy of it. The police department should have a copy of it. The Library of Congress or courthouse. I think this is like a legal disclosure for the chaplaincy. Because just because we don't know the answers doesn't mean that we can be held liable for things that we don't know and tell you. But so that you're basically responsible for knowing what you're obligated to, okay, or prohibited from. The last little dot, many states have mandated reporter laws. Are you included in yours as a clergy, person, or chaplain? Check it out. This last sentence is kind of like, what? Why do they put this in here? Because it's not likely. There's a very thorny problem if you have privileged communication and yet are mandated reporters. So we know that the reporters are not obligated to reveal their sources, but we, as chaplains, don't have that privilege. So, you know, I don't know what kind of reporting agencies there are to update us, but at this particular time, this is my knowledge. Okay, don't I have another thing about those different laws? I thought I had another page about the laws. Well, then let me go back to these 3 laws, okay? Because I thought there was something after this about them, unless I lost the page. Okay. In Carter versus Broadlands Medical Center, there was a complaint about using public funds to hire a a religious worker. That's basically what it was, and that must have been Carter. And Providence Medical Center was the one that hired a chaplain to and paid with the funds. So they lost, and so that means that agencies like public, like county can pay a chaplain, a hospital can pay a chaplain. They're not advancing religion, they're not putting it into a private nonprofit organization, they are paying a chaplain a job. And so we also talked about that there was a secular purpose for providing a spiritual counselor in a hospital. It is proven through different research that people that have faith and have spiritual support heal better. So they were showing that they have a valid reason for having a chaplain, not because they're promoting masses in St. John Hospital, but because those masses for Catholics in St. John Hospital are beneficial to their overall health, spirit, soul, body. Okay, and St. John's Medical Facility is I think more spiritually minded than some of the other medical centers in the area, like Beaumont, etc. Although they do have some new agey kind of stuff that goes along with the world, I think. But they also are more open and helpful for people that cannot pay for care, and they will help you. They helped me find the means of getting medical coverage for my treatment. So that's, all facilities will negotiate cash payments for people. That is one of the things, whatever, not an individual doctor might not, but anyway, that's the case with St. John Hospital. Okay, Voswinkle versus the City of Charlotte, that's the one that I was talking about, where this person, Voswinkle, objected to the Baptist minister being a chaplain for the city, and because they were saying they were pushing the advancement of religion, but that was found not to be the case by the court, and I should have had somewhere which courts, I must be in my notes, which court. There was a couple that were in appellate courts, and one of these was in the Supreme Court. And then Lynch versus Donnelly, as I remember, it's kind of a silly thing. It has to do with, what actually happened is there was a nativity scene. And somebody, I would imagine it was Lynch, objected to the nativity scene in a public place. And he lost the case because it was determined that it wasn't an advancement of religion. And because a nativity scene was displayed with other Christmas holiday kind of images on public, like a reindeer in a sleigh kind of thing, or Santa Claus, or snowmen, things. So that it was an accepted part of.
I Googled it. Lynch versus Donnelly.
Okay, so it was an accepted part of holiday decorations. So although it was religious,
1984.
although it was religious, it wasn't propagating religion. So it was acceptable.
It's based on a true story.
Well, some people don't think it's true.
Right.
But even still, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, someone could object because there was a worship of
A reindeer with a red nose.
or Santa Claus or something about.
Yeah, isn't it? He's one that led Santa sleigh, or?
you know, about the, you know, something religious about the North Pole, so. And, so basically what that determined is that it wasn't advancing or prohibiting religion, there was a secular purpose. I mean, and I think it was with the Boswickle versus the City of Charlotte, not having the, I'd have to look which one it was, that either the City of Charlotte or Broadlands Medical Center, I think it was probably the City of Charlotte, it would be excessive entanglement for them to get into what the minister chaplain was doing in his exercise and governing what he could say and what he could not say, that he wasn't trying to put people into his church or whatever. So those are basically the three illegal statutes that are a long time ago. Now somebody mentioned to me that they are very afraid with Hillary that all of our rights and things are going to just disappear the minute she might be inaugurated. I don't believe that. I don't
think, I mean, I understand the president has full, but I mean, he can't just do what he wants. I mean, he really can't. I mean, he's gotta go through channels.
I mean,
Right. I mean, it's not like they can just be like,
there are certain organizations that are targeting Christians.
Thank you, that's what really what I was getting to. Like the IRS when they were targeting Christians. And organizations that supported 501c3 organizations. But I guess this is more referring to chaplains, not just.
Right. So, I mean, there is, as the world gets more and more secular and away from God, there is going to be different things that are targeted, but just because, I mean, I wanted to mention that there's a thing called executive order that the president can just make a ruling on something. And like President Obama in his first 100 days reversed every positive Christian executive order that Bush made. Okay. That's not her agenda.
Maybe.
That's not her agenda. Her repercussions if she becomes president are byproducts of her agenda. There are people that are out to get us. There's no doubt about it. But we don't enjoy the persecution that people did in Babylon, in Rome, and I mean, we just don't have the favor that we had during the Reagan era, for example. And people don't have the morals that they had in the 1950s. So we caught up. What do you think about that?
Wow, we did.
We did. So I will look over my notes on these laws and find out if there's anything I didn't cover adequately. So our homework is, our beloved homework is to do chapter 4 of the ethics book and the week 4 questions. Read some in the faith. You might want to talk about some of the things in that book, you know, because you found some of it, his thoughts confusing.
I just don't know what the words are that he's using.
Yeah. Yeah, because he does speak with a Google. Yeah.
It's like,
Homework for week 4. Were you going to say something?
I need to do this page so that I can complete week 4.
Right. You need to do that. So week 4 is to read chapter 4 of Ethics 101, and the next, skip a dot, chapter 4, week 4 questions, which relate to that chapter. Keep reading in the faith, which I've told you to start reading it so that you'd be reading something and getting something out of the book. And then the last thing on our bullet points is to phone 3 resources from your list to gain information on help available. Now, from the case study that you did, if you want to contact a different, kind of do a different needs evaluation because you're facing a situation or dealing with somebody or have a particular need for a different kind of investigation about resources versus just this one with the couple that lost the job. I think that covers actually a lot of different areas of need for us to contact. But to try to find 3 sources and find out how to help the people in their situation. The first class I did, someone pretended that they were actually looking for somebody. You know, kind of did it like a real role play. So, you know.
Well, that's what I mean, I'd call and be like, yeah, kind of sort of, just depends.
So
Yeah.
that's what I don't, so we're supposed to act like we're really helping somebody when we talk to these people on the phone?
You don't have to, you just say, I just need information.
Yeah.
You just say,
Oh.
I need information on
Or-
how, or
blah, blah,
this
blah,
kind
blah.
of info,
Or-
for a person that is whatever, and they'll give you like,
They don't get into the
why do you need this?
Yeah,
Or just like,
I mean, you could say, you know.
Or you could just tell me, do it for chaplaincy.
I mean, that's what
Yeah, either one, but, you know,
they'll give you information. Yeah, it's
but you could
amazing
just
how-
say, basically you're looking for information to help a couple that needs this or this or this.
Yeah, and that's
It's
just,
a practice.
Yeah.
they'll give you all the,
And so, you know, I'm looking for information to help a couple. You don't have to say a couple I'm working with because, and that's stretching it.
well,
You know, so basically that's that. And the week 4 questions, living a 24 karat gold life.